I'd share it with you if I could, but truth be told. Our lesson today is coming from Luke chapter 12. We are going to be learning about stewardship. And when I say the word stewardship, a lot of people immediately think cha-ching. They think only dollar signs, they think only money. And I got news for you. Stewardship is so much more than just a dollar. A lot of people want to get so hung up on, they're just talking about money. They're just after us to pay tithes and stuff. I'm here to tell you, stewardship is more than that. Yes, that is part of it, but it's more than that. Let's go ahead and jump right into it, feet first. Luke chapter 12, verse number 16. And he spake a parable unto them, saying. Now, first of all, as soon as it starts out with, he spake a parable unto them, who is speaking? Jesus is, because he taught how? He taught with parables. Have you ever noticed a lot of times you can't get people to understand until you can give them a story that they can say, oh man, what if that were me? That's just like living at my own house. You got to make it real to them. You got to make them realize this could be you. So, he spake a parable unto them, saying, the ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, what shall I do? Because I have no room where to bestow my fruits. You talk about a blessed fella. This guy was definitely a rich man simply because he was able, his ground raised some good food. He raised so many crops. He didn't have enough place in the barn to put them on. So he starts thinking, Lord, have mercy, what am I going to do with all this stuff? So over on verses 18, and he said, this will I do. I will pull down my barns and build greater. And there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. There is a key word that I hear a whole lot in verse number 18 especially. It's a little two-letter word. Give you a hint. It starts with an M, rhymes with rye. Anybody want to guess it? My. As a Christian believer, are we supposed to come across with my? Absolutely not. Nothing I have is truly mine. Anything I have is because He blessed me with it. So, in reality, everything I have owns by God. Okay? It belongs to Him. It doesn't really belong to me, because if I didn't have Him to bless me, I would have nothing. This farmer, rich man, lots of goods, well, he did what any normal human would do. I got all this stuff. I ain't got no place to put it. I need to tear that barn down, build me a bigger barn so I can store up some more stuff. And then he looked at everything he had and he was like, well, boy, I've really done a lot of stuff here. I guess it's time for me just to kick back and take it easy. Now, how many of us, when we get to a certain age, we hope to retire? We hope to kick back and take it easy. I know I'm thinking it right now. And me and Charlie, we're still young, aren't we, Charlie? I mean, Kim she can barely walk right now. She just quit crawling a few weeks ago, so that's how young we are. Not really, but I'm going to go for it all I can. But we still want to plan ahead and have something to retire. We want to be able to live peacefully when we get to a certain point. And that's everybody, seems like what we want to do, right? And this farmer in verse 19, when he says, so I told, and he didn't even say it was the soul that belonged to God. Whose soul did he say? My soul. Soul, thou hast many goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease. That means you can go ahead and retire. Kick back, relax. You're going to live good. And in verse 20, but God said unto him, thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall those things be, which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself, and is not rich toward God. The Bible has a lot of scripture talking about the rich person, and how it is difficult for a rich person to enter into the kingdom of heaven. But when they're talking about that, they're not saying it's impossible for a rich person to be saved and go to heaven. It's the fact that sometimes in this society, and you've got to admit, we live in a very materialistic society, people get blinded by what they think are needs and they think are the important things in life. When it comes down to it, He owns it all. He owns the cattle of what? 1,000 hills, not just a couple of hills, 1,000 of hills. And I'd say thousands of thousands of hills. God owns it all. Everything in creation, it all came to be because of God. He created it all. So we would have nothing if He hadn't blessed us with it. But sometimes it's so unfortunate. People will start earning money, and then they want to earn more money, and then they get something with that money, and they think, ooh, look what I got. How many of y'all can remember your first vehicle? How many of y'all, that was pride and joy? Oh, Lord, how much every dollar we got, what we do? We sink it into a vehicle. I'll never forget the first vehicle I ever had. It was a 1980-something. I can't remember, 82, I think, Chevette. Have you ever heard of the Chevette? Let me let you know it's the ugliest vehicle ever known to man. But I was proud of my Chevette. Had a steering wheel approximately this big, about that big around right there. I was killer on wheels. Not because I was a bad driver, but because I had that strip of rubber. It went down the side, but it wouldn't stay attached onto the side. So if it was constantly flapping off in the wind. I tried to dodge every, God love them, every bicyclist, because I would whack them right off the bike if I passed them with my Chevette. But anyway, I love that Chevette. My mom and dad paid $300 for that Chevette. And within the next month, I sunk my own $360 into it just to make it run. I was proud to have my own car. My little friend, she had this little red something or another. It's all sporty. She's like, come on, follow me to school. I'll never forget. I had to be in college before I ever got a car. I rode the bus. I could have driven the school bus. I was so old on that school bus. But I rode that school bus, and I was driving to college in Morristown, going to Walter State. And I'll never forget. Here she was like, whee, with her little red car, and I was behind her in my Chevette. Whee. I had that thing floored. It finally made it up to 80 one time going downhill. I kicked it out of gear. But anyway, I was still proud of that Chevette. You see, the first thing we start getting that pride, but we start working and we start sinking in and we're like, ooh, look what I have. Look what I finally have. And if we're not careful, what will happen? That will consume us. Because it's not what I have, but what more do I want? What more can I get? And what more can I go for? We've got to realize that what society portrays as being successful in new cars, new houses, new this, new that, the best of everything to wear, you got to look good, smell good. That's not always what it's about. We need to put God first and realize that He is what it's all about. What good is a vehicle if I can't pick up somebody and bring them to church? God has blessed my family with many things. Many things. Now, I've messed up a whole lot of things, but God has blessed me with things. And I do thoroughly believe the reason He blesses me with things is because I do what it takes to serve Him. Because let me tell you, if you're not going to put Him first, why should He bless you with things? And that's why we need to be sure to teach our children. Things are not that important. What is important is living according to God. This farmer, he started out being very blessed. He started out absolutely described as rich. Had lots of stuff. But in the end, God's like, listen, you're going to die tonight. Then what's going to happen to all your stuff? You're going to leave it behind, and what's going to happen? Have you ever met family members? God love them. You let mama or papa pass away, and the whole family swings up to a big fight. And they go for years and won't even speak to each other. What a travesty. And are you kidding me? This is family. You're supposed to be united together. And people will allow material stuff. Yeah, they can't take their stuff to heaven, can they? And sad to say, in history, people have thought they take it with them. Hence, Egyptians. Hence, people are like, just put it, in the casket. That takes me back to this silly joke that I heard a long time ago. This man, he was so wealthy and so rich and blessed. And he told his wife, he said, the only thing I care about, I want to take it all with me. She's like, all right, I'll see to it. He said, okay. He said, when I die in the coffin, I want you to place all my money. She said, I'll do it. Well, he died. And she carried through with the promise. Somebody asked her, they said, well, did you put all these money in there with you? She said, absolutely. They said, really? She said, I sure did. I wrote him a check of every penny we have in the bank, and it's inside the coffin with me. Sometimes people get blinded about what they think they have, like they're going to take it. We are not laying up treasures, and that does go on with the next part of our lesson. We're not making stuff and laying up treasures here to take to heaven. We are laying up treasures here because God blesses us, because we are serving Him in the beginning of it. If you can't outgive God. And what I said at first about tithes, we're not going to be preaching and focusing completely on tithing in money form. How many of us tithe in our time? How many of us tithe in our talents? See, we need to see the whole picture of it, not just part of it. There are a couple of little side notes, though, that I've got to share with you. I just thought they had some of the best ones in here. Charlie.
God bless me with the ability to have program growth with God. He was given a choice. At that time, he could have been a blessing to so many that maybe didn't have it, at this point. He could have affected many lives, but a lot of times when we start thinking, and that's our worst problem, we start thinking, I have this, I've got a choice, I can either help somebody, or I can lay this up, preserve it so it doesn't spoil and go bad, and then I'll have it live off the rest of my life. And that's just being stingy.
Yeah.
When God blesses us,
we are supposed to be a generous people. We are supposed to have an outreaching hand, I guess is the best way I can describe it. We need to be able to help others. We need to be able to reach out and minister to other people. Now, does that mean to constantly give out and give out and give out? No, you got to use wisdom with it. More than one time, our church, we have had to use wisdom. Something that's really interesting, and I've just found this out since Jimmy's been pastor of this church, but a lot of people look at the church building and they think, cha-ching. They think, oh, I need money. I'm just going to stop there at that big church. Just because it's physically larger doesn't mean that you're just going to get handout after handout. But people, when they see that in the physical sense, they see it and they're like, whew, there's a big new church. Let's stop there and ask for money. Sometimes we haven't had the money to give. Yes, ma'am. You have to be wise. And we have a council, thank you, Jesus, for it, that act accordingly. We have some members in this very community, and they're in every community you go to, don't get me wrong. But there are some members in this community. Every season and every holiday, that's when they start calling on us. Oh, we want to give your church, and I like it when they phrase it like this, we want to give your church the opportunity to help. Help us with our family's needs during this holiday season. Well, you haven't even darkened the door to hear a word of God in the past 6 months, and now it's Christmas, you going to start coming? I mean, it is sad when you can see certain families and individuals that when they come through the door for 2 weeks straight, that third week they're going to ask for money. It's not a job to attend church. It's a privilege. We shouldn't have to pay you to come to church. And at the same time, you shouldn't pay to come to church. See, it's not paying, it's giving. When you love God, you're going to live according to His Word. And it becomes a privilege, and you truly see it as a part of worship to be able to give back from what God has already given you. Charlie?
If you give to someone who only abuses that privilege, then that's taken away the opportunity to bless somebody that truly needs to be blessed.
That's right. Because we have people who are so dedicated in our church, and you know what? Everybody falls on a hard time now and then. We want to be able to help those people. But if we're so busy giving handouts to everybody coming and going, How are we going to help those who are truly faithful and dedicated to God? And sometimes, just like the sister said, you've got to be wise in your decisions. And we have done it before where we knew a family was in need, but it was one of those that would show up every holiday coming and going. We'd see them every Easter, Mother's Day, Father's Day, and Christmas, pretty much. And they'd always do the same thing. Oh, we need help. We need help. All right. You write us a list of what groceries you need. We go to the store and buy, and then we bring you the bag of just food for the children in the house. Because so many people, you give them cash or any form of money, they go here and they buy anything they want to. We don't want to give money to spend on not necessities. Anyhow, in Luke 16, verse number 1 and 2, listen to this one. And he said unto his disciples, there was a certain rich man which had a steward, and the same was accused unto him that he had wasted his goods. And he called him and said unto him, how is it that I hear this of thee? Give an account of thy stewardship, for thou mayest be no longer steward. A steward is like the manager of the property. And in this story, you had, once again, a rich person, and they had a manager that tended to all of their stuff. They dealt with their accounts, they dealt with their assets, okay? Their material things this steward tended to. Well, this steward actually started treating the stuff like it was his own personal stuff instead of belonging to someone else. He was using it for his own gain. He was using it for his own building up. Understand this. When God blesses us with stuff, we're not supposed to think, oh, it's just me. It's just mine. That's what that first farmer dude said, mine. No, it's not mine. It's his, and he's blessed me with it to use it on his behalf. Well, in this situation, the steward, he came back to the guy who owned it, that, hey, he's like using this like it's his own. Sometimes when we have something and we treat it like it's our own, we don't take as good care of it. When I borrow your car, sometime in the past year, we had a family vacation plan. And our vehicles, everything we owned, went shot all at the same time. Transmission fell out of one. The other one still ain't running. It just exploded, died, whatever. It was horrible at my house. We're car poor. If you know what that means. We got a bunch of them. Can't use none of them. It was awful. And I'm like, I've already put money in this vacation. How in the world are we supposed to go this place? Thank God, the guy who was repairing the transmission looks at me, and it's Shane that comes to church here. He goes, I've got an extra car that runs. Take it. I'm like, are you sure? He's like, absolutely. Take it on. Nobody drives it. Nice Blazer, rode good. Well, we took his car. We went on vacation. You talk about taking care of somebody's vehicle. Before we got back, Jimmy, he'd vacuum that thing. He cleaned it. I think he spit shined it 2 different times. It's clean. It looked good. A lot better than what we did when we picked it up, even. We take it back. He goes, well, you didn't have to clean it and shine it up out. Oh, yes, sir. That's not our vehicle. You have to have pride. Take care of people's stuff. Respect their property. However, right now, if you go into my Jeep at my house, you will find cereal bowls, spoons, clothing that I don't know how these people get out of my car without being butt naked, because most of their closets are in the back of my vehicle right now. And I'm like, y'all are forgetting stuff. And then I looked at Shade's car. Jimmy's, man, he's scrubbing. And I'm like, why don't you do this to the Jeep every once in a while? He goes, we own the Jeep. Sometimes we get a little bit lazier when it comes to our own stuff, right? We don't stress about, we got to keep this spotless and clean. Well, no, it's our own stuff. I get it tomorrow. But if it belongs to somebody else, I'm going to take care of that. We do that because we love the person, right? And that's how it's supposed to be. That's what he's teaching in this lesson. When you're supposed to be taking care of someone else's stuff, you should love and respect them enough to make sure it's taken care of correctly. It's taken care of the way it should be taken care of. Well, whose stuff is it that you are possessing right now? Isn't it all God's? Are you respecting and taking care of it accordingly? What if he showed up at the house and asked me for my Jeep? I'd be ashamed. I'd give him 10 minutes. And I'd be flinging stuff out the back of the car and cleaning and scrubbing. How many of y'all, if Pastor called and said, I'll be over at your house today, 2 o'clock, how many of y'all would go through that house and try to scrub it out real nice and get things picked up, kick the cat out the back door for a little while? I know I would. No, I wouldn't. I live with him. Anyway, if one of y'all came to my house, I would. Are we treating stuff just like God's going to show up every day? How about the way we tend to our own bodies? Do we really treasure it? I look at what I had for breakfast yesterday and I'm thinking, I must not treasure this temple too awful much because it's turning into a tent. Because that's what I'm going to have to be wearing if I don't cut back on some of my intake. Nothing but tents. 6 person. Preacher what? Our body is the temple of God. Paul teaches that we are supposed to tend to this body like it is a temple. I appreciate my sister this morning. She came in to me. She was like, if a person had a drink, are they supposed to bring in a sanctuary? And we've always taught we don't eat or drink inside the sanctuary. I was so glad that she respected enough of God's house to actually say something and ask and not just act on whatever she felt. When people and everyone acts on what they feel, boy, it can get to be a fiasco, can't it? It absolutely can. We need to always reverence God and what belongs to God in the utmost. Well, wait a minute. Everything belongs to God. Yes, ma'am. Exactly. He is everywhere. It's called being what? Omnipresent. And even if you can't see him with your physical eye, you've got to understand that he is omniscient. What's that mean? He already knows it all. He sees it. He knows it. People like to say how Santa Claus knows it all. God knows it all. He's everywhere. He does see when you're sleeping. And he does know when you're awake. He knows the thoughts that are in your head. What you think of? Anyway, this steward is called in. The guy looks at him and goes, okay. I kind of imagine the guy owning it being the IRS and the steward being the one cheating on his taxes. Because he's immediately going to call into account. He's fixing to have a rundown of the books. Verse number 3, then the steward said within himself, what shall I do? For my Lord taketh away from me the stewardship. I cannot dig. To beg I am ashamed. I am resolved what to do, that when I am put out of stewardship, they may receive me into their houses. So he called every one of his Lord's debtors unto him, and he said unto the first, how much owest thou unto my Lord? And he said, 100 measures of oil. And he said unto him, take thy bill and sit down quickly and write 50. Then he said to another, how much thou owest? And he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said unto him, take thy bill and write 80. This manager was going, this steward, he was going to everyone who owed his master. He's not doing the right thing. He's still cheating the master. He's still, you could call it embezzlement, for lack of a better word. He was cheating the master to profit himself. He's like, man, I've been sitting behind this desk so long, I can't get out here and dig. Look at my little noodly arms. They're just good for writing stuff. And I can't go out here and beg people. That's shameful. I'd be ashamed to beg somebody. Boy, aren't a lot of us ashamed to do a lower job. There's so many people that are ashamed to get out here and do what it takes. Go ahead. Exactly. But he wasn't able to go out here and fend for himself. He got blinded by the materials. He got blinded by the profit to where he wanted to take profit for himself. When they checked the books, they found, oh yeah, he's going to be messed up. So he was out of a job. So to help watch out for himself, he actually played it smart and cheatful. There's a double thing here on this lesson. Preacher. Writing the actual, when he cut down on what their bills were, How did he make those people feel toward him? Yeah, he was taken from them. Actually, he was stealing from them. When he cut those bills and said that, okay, you owed 100 things of oil, just mark that off and write 50. Hey, these people are liking him. How many of y'all ever went through Walmart? If you went up there and paid and you had $100 debt, they looked at you and said, oh, honey, that's okay. Just put it for 50 and go on. Immediately, that cashier is my friend. And that's what these guys did. Probably what? The 50 he took off? Oh, yeah, he's already embezzled that away anyway, right? Before that, absolutely. He's been doing this his whole time in patting his own pocket and taking a little bit off the top for himself. That is cheating, no matter what. Even when my children, even when people work the concession stand for a ball game, some of my people back, I have heard them say, well, Lord, I've been back here working 2 hours. I think I deserve this. And they'll pop themselves open something to drink and they start funneling it. If you haven't been given that, you see what I'm saying? If you haven't been given that up front, don't go and take it and think you deserve that. Wait for God to bless you with that. Wait for someone to give that to you. You don't just go and take and take and take. That's not how it's supposed to work. But this guy, when he went in and he cut these bills, and he's like, listen, you only pay 50 of that, and you only do 80 of it. He actually made friends of the people he was giving the discounts to. Was he doing the master wrong? Absolutely. Was he watching out for his future, however? Absolutely. His material future. Because when he needed something, who was he going to go call on? Those very people that he gave the discount to. You see, we need to be careful. If we partake in things like that, it's going to come back later on. If you hang around and help those who are deceitfully living, it's going to come back later on you. Well, now, when the master heard of this, let's go to verse number 8. And the Lord commended the unjust steward, because he had done wisely. For the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. And I say unto you, make to yourselves friends of the mammon of unrighteousness, that when ye fail, they may receive you into everlasting habitations. Simply put, befriend people. You can befriend a sinner without becoming a sinner. You can befriend people who live materialistically without becoming materialistic. Okay? You can do that. You can set the example for them. And you know what? When it comes down to it and you start falling on hard times, you know what will happen? God will use those people to come back and bless you. One time when my grandmother, I was just a little girl, was living at home, my mama got terrible sick. She got so sick for years. She was hospital, nursing homes for years. Well, at the first get-go of it, like 3 months straight, she was in a hospital, in a psychiatric kind of place. And insurance, well, it's about like it is now. It's pretty awful. And we started receiving these bills for thousands of dollars at my house. Because my grandmother, her husband had been dead for years and years and years. She didn't work a job. She never even drove a car, nevertheless go and work a job. She was a house mom. She was a grandmother in the house. So the bills all fell back on my family. Well, I'll never forget, because she had befriended people. I'll never forget my parents going and checking the mail, and they'd get a card in the mail. And one time in particular, of course I'm a kid, it's been a long time ago at that time, I remember my mom just crying and thanking Jesus because one of these people had sent her a card with $400 stuffed inside to pay toward my grandmother's medical bills. God will bless you if you put Him first. We have to remember to prioritize and make sure that priority is God. Even in the unjust situations, God will come through and use those very people to help you, sister. Oh, no. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly right. And verse number 10. And that goes right into this verse. He that is faithful, and this is Luke chapter 16. He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. And he that is unjust in the least is unjust also in much. The small little things, if a person is faithful in that, you watch, they're going to be faithful in bigger things in life. I watched for a long time at the little churches. Tina Cook would come in and she'd clean. And she was faithful in that cleaning. And as she would clean, she'd always get the anointing oil and she'd anoint every pew and pray for it as she cleaned. And I look at Tina, and she is just, to me, she is an extremely blessed woman. Now, does she live in a mansion? No, I'm not talking materialistically blessed. I just see that if you look at her family, mainly they're sitting right here. If you want to look at them now, you can go ahead. Anyway, look at how I find her blessed. God has blessed her with her husband an extended time beyond that which any doctor thought. He has blessed her with some grandkids that I just think you guys got 3 of the best kids I've ever met in my life. They would do anything in this world for me if I went and asked them to. I truly believe that. That is ability and a character that only comes from God. Only comes from God. Because the devil wants to sway everything. But just as the sister was saying, we can be blessed in more than materials. We can be blessed in time. Anybody in here besides me feel tired a whole lot? You know, there are some days that God will give you the energy to carry on when you don't feel like you could carry on. Have you given Him His time? How many hours are there in one complete day? 24 hours? I wish it's 94. I get more done. 24 hours in one day. What is a tenth of that? We always look at that tenth stuff. It actually is written in the Word that we're supposed to give a tenth. The first tenth is what we're supposed to tithe. A lot of people want to get hung up on the material side and the money side for that. But I'm here to tell you, we need to tithe our time first. So out of 24 hours, what is 1/10? 2 hours and
40 minutes.
40 minutes. Actually, the 4 is a tenth, so it's actually more like a 20 minutes, isn't it? So, understand, we got just a little over 2 hours that we should give God every day. Well, do we? I know I don't. I know I try. I know the first thing I do as I'm on my way to work is to listen to the Word and to pray before Jimmy leaves. We read the Bible as a family and we pray together. We don't pray 2 hours. Lord have mercy. Sometimes I feel like I'm lucky to get 2 minutes in. How many of y'all with me on that one? Things are so rushed and so stressed, and you're just a flinging, throwing kids' bodies everywhere, trying to get clothes on them to get them to school and get them out the door. And Lord, did they eat anything? Where are their shoes? Do they even have shoes on their feet? We get so caught up in everything going on that sometimes we don't give God that tenth. Let's look at the days of the week. How many days in a week? 7. How many actual work days do people want to claim, though? Monday through Friday, they only want to do 5. Well, what is a tenth of that? That should be an entire half day, shouldn't it? A tenth of 5, that's 0.5, that's 1/2, that's 1/2 a day. We can't even make it to church for 2 services in a row on a Sunday. You see, tithing comes in all forms. And what if we did tithe that whole 7 days of the week? Woo, Lord have mercy, now it's going to get ugly, ain't it, Shelby? What about tithing our talents? And when I say tithing talents, I'm not saying, well, I can't play the piano. I'm not talking about the piano. I'm not talking about musical instruments. I'm not talking about getting up here and teaching. I'm talking about anything that you could do on behalf of God. Does it have to even be here at church? No. When's the last time that you did something because God led you to do it? You know, He teaches that whole gentleness, meekness, long-suffering, love, joy, peace. Do we actually live it every day? When's the last time when we got out, we're driving down the road, and somebody starts to pull out, we stop and say, you come right on. Even that might be a sacrifice for a lot of us, wouldn't it? Some more than others. Understand, God deserves way more than what we give. Showing up and washing down these windows could be a form of giving back to God. Could it not? Showing up and mowing, form of giving back to God. Stopping and helping someone change a flat tire on the road that you've never even seen before. That could be a way of giving back to God. One night on the way home, we was taking Grady home from church. That's when we had to travel a few the road. The bridge was still closed. Thank you, Jesus, for opening that thing up. Well, wasn't that a trial to have to get through? Anyway, especially for Mindy's family. She didn't drive like a nut. It'd been a whole lot easier, right, Peppy? Anyway, he's like, I can't slow her down for years. She's just in a hurry. Woman's in a hurry, okay? So we're going down Fugate Road, and it had been a long Sunday. One of them, we just shouted and ran, and sweat dripped. Do you ever notice how much Jimmy sweats in the arms? I do every time I wash his shirts. Anyway, he's just dripping sweat. He's hot and bothered and everything else. We start down through there, and right in one of the little skinny parts of the road, this little old woman sitting there in her truck, back tire just as flat as can be. She wasn't even bothering getting out. Why bother? We spent the next hour with my husband laying on the ground underneath her truck because, praise Jesus, the spare was up underneath, trying to figure out how to get the thing out of there and change it and everything else, while I sat there and talked with that little lady. By the time we finished, she was able to drive home. I know this because we followed her. Purposely, we followed her. Because the other tire looked as bad as that one. And the spare a little sketchy. So we followed her all the way home. You know, God blesses for that. He does. So the next time you see somebody sitting there on the side of the road, try to think, I need to make some time for this. Now notice what I said there. You need to make some time for it. We don't have time for it. We need to make time for it. Sometimes other people are just going to have to understand, hey, I need to do that. I need to take care of that. I need to go see so-and-so. I need to talk to this person. Give God what He deserves. You know what He really deserves? He deserves all 24 hours. That's what He deserves. But in the little stuff, if a person is faithful with that, you can count on them to be faithful later on in life. Number 11, if therefore ye have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will commit to your trust the true riches? And if ye have not been faithful in that which is another man's, who shall give you that which is your own? How can God trust us with certain things if we don't put Him first? How can He give us something small? A lot of times start out with something small, see if you're going to take care of it. How many parents ever done that with kids? You get them something small. Hey, I'll get you this if you take care of that, then we'll work on that. That goes back to my 19-whatever Chevette. I think they always named them Chevettes because I had to shove it a whole lot and the name rhymed. But anyway, Daddy had to teach me a trick on how to start the thing when it wouldn't start. Didn't realize he was teaching me how to hotwire my own car. I just thought it was a cute trick. Then later on, the heater never worked until you popped the hood and there was something in there you had to take a stick and hit on just right to get the heat to come on. Whew, I was in style. I was styling in my Chevette. All right, but my parents were some of those that believed you don't get something new. When you get that first vehicle, you need to get something, prove yourself with it. First of all, can you drive? Why should we buy you something brand new? You'd be bouncing off guardrails from here to there and driving like a nut. When the speed limit sign says 5.5, that doesn't mean to go 8.5. It means to go 5.5. That would be 55. Anybody didn't pick that up. Anyway, had a little friend. She was in driver's ed. She's going down Highway 70. Had the highway sign up. White sign, big square. Has the letters or the number 70 written on it. Guess what my friend started doing? She started doing 70. First of all, she wasn't quite from here. She was an Asian, and she barely spoke the language. So she looks, he's like, oh, it's 70. And she floored it. The instructor, I thought, had 3 strokes by the time he hit his own brakes on his side of the car going, no, he stopped. What are you doing? She goes, this sign, it says 70. We need to realize and pay attention to what we are supposed to do in life. Take care of the little things. Charlie, if you couldn't trust Corey to take care of a vehicle, would you ever let him borrow yours? If you knew when he got behind that steering wheel that it was going to flip and he was going to go sideways around every curve, absolutely not. You see, it's something small just to try to get a kid to school sometimes. Sometimes it's huge to try to get a kid to school. But sometimes it's a small thing. Just, hey, can I borrow your car to run up to the store? There are some people, if they ask me to borrow my car just to drive from here up to the State Line store to buy themselves Coca-Cola, I'd look at them and say, I'll just take you. Because I don't want you driving my vehicle. I would like to have all 4 tires back. But then there are some people that I ask, be like, yeah, go ahead, because you know that they'll attend to it. You know, that's how our relationship with God is. What can He trust you with? I know God could not trust me to raise more than 1 child. Why is that? Well, I'm only able to have 1 child. I had Leah, that's it. We're done. He knows my being. He knows everything about me. He knows what I can and cannot handle. And I've told people this a lot. I always wanted to have more than 1 child. I never wanted to have just 1 child. But that's what Stellania wanted, or what God wanted. God blessed me with my child. And then He said, she's done, close the house. Let's shut that door and lock it. All right? Wasn't meant, because I believe He understands with my being, I couldn't handle it. On the other hand, God knew that He could trust Mindy with more than 1. And He could trust her after she had finished raising hers to go and raise somebody else's to become her own. He trusted that Peppy could handle Mindy in raising those children. Hey, sometimes it's a little bit harder on the fella to have to deal with the woman than the woman to deal with the kids, is it not? Yeah, don't we get crazy sometimes? Charlie's back there going, woo, preach it. Charlie, I'll be taking up another offering here in just a minute. All right, Peppy, just be ready. Understand, we got to be faithful in the small stuff. My daughter, who has yet to sleep in her bedroom, yeah, I'm going to tell on her now, she wants to sleep with Mom and Daddy every day of her life. Well, we have physically put her out of bed. All right? She's not allowed to sleep in a bed. What she do, she built her own bed at the foot of my bed. Every day, or make that every night, about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I either trip or step on my own child as I'm up giving it this, trying to find a bathroom. All right? Because she loves Mom and Dad. She won't be right there. Well, she'll look at me and she'll say, you know, Mama, I need to have a desk in my bedroom. I'm like, why? You never darken the door of the place. Mama, I need to have such and such. Can I get a guinea pig? There's a big one she wants. Can I have a guinea pig? Yeah, after you resurrect that, hamster from the dead that you killed from not feeding it. Yeah, let's see. If I can't be trusting you to raise something this big, how am I going to get you something this big? It was great for the first, 2 weeks. And then she had to keep up with it. Understand, you got to be faithful in that little stuff. If God can't even trust you to show up at church, how can He continue to pour out those blessings and pour out those blessings? He's got to be able to trust you. He's got to be able to know that you're going to be faithful. When Leah starts talking all this stuff of, boy, Mama, I need this, that, and the other, and I'm like, you didn't take care of the first one. Why should I get you the second? How many parents do I have there with me on that? My parents were with that big Chevette. I'm like, I need something newer. No, this will be the practice vehicle. Let's see how well you take care of this. Today, I wouldn't take anything for the memories of that ugly Chevette. Having to jump start it, hot wire it, beat it with a bat to get the heater to come on, using super glue, Gorilla Glue. They didn't have Gorilla Glue at that time. It was mainly super glue. Super glue doesn't work on like car, Bondo, and rubber. I did find that out, so don't try that. Finally, I just got out the gray duct tape and just taped it down on the side of the vehicle. It worked. And then when that started to come off because of the rain and stuff, I just went ahead and grabbed the whole rubber piece, went slap, and ripped the whole thing off. And then everything that flew by me stuck to the side of the car on that one little strip. Anyway, you got to be able to show that you can tend to something small before you can be blessed with something bigger. Can God trust you? For that matter, can you trust yourself? In verse number 13, no servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. If we're going to live for money, it will consume us completely, and God will be shut out. If we are going to live for God, God will take care of blessing us with everything else, won't He? Now, when I say blessing us, I'm not saying that He's going to pour out millions of dollars on us. But you know what? There is one individual that does show that greatly in the county where I live. This guy has more money, I'm telling you what. And he didn't start out that way. He built up in like Land Air. It's like a truck delivery, truck driving kind of place to where he delivers everywhere. Well, when he starts getting his money, you know what the first thing was he started doing? He started donating to places to build new places for kids in hospitals. There is an actual hospital in Johnson City that's named after him. It's called the Niswonger Children's Hospital. Have you ever heard that name, Niswonger? Let me tell you, if you ever go around Greenville, Greene County, Johnson City, you know the name. Because he himself donated enough money to the county schools. Every single county high school got to build on a new band room, new things like you wouldn't believe, top of the line stuff. And not one time did he ever ask anything back from it. You turn right around, the next day, you know what happens? God blesses him even more. Gives millions to the city to build this great big performing arts to focus and uplift the children. And in this performing arts place, several Christian things go on. Let me tell you, you can't outgive God. Now we are going to flip back over to the money side of it. We are supposed to be giving of our tithes to support the ministry of God. That doesn't mean that you need to do everything you can just for one person, one thing, yada yada. You need to pray and see where God wants you to serve at the most. And when I say serve, I mean in paying of your tithes. Maybe it is with time, maybe it is with talent, maybe it is with money. Doesn't matter. I have a lot of people who will tell me, I want to do something for God. I want to do something for God. I know coming up, even in something so small as a Christmas play, small little thing only happens once a year. When I look around, I've got a lot of people in this church that are limited income, right? They don't have the money to throw in there, but they'll look at me and say, well, what can I do? What can I do? How awesome is that? I love that mindset. What can I do for God? We need to ask that more of ourselves, do we not? Think this week of something small that you can do. Maybe for family, maybe for neighbors, maybe for just friends, maybe for somebody you've never met before in your life. You know what? It makes you feel just as good as it makes them feel. It truly does. Because you're doing it out of love. You may not know them, but you know God created them. I've used this one before. Next time you go through a drive-thru and you actually have extra cash, doesn't happen too often. But if you do, go through there and say, hey, I'm going to pay for that car behind me. When they get up here, you just tell them that God loves them. Will you do that? Most every single one of them will do that for you. And just think of that person when they pull up at drive-thru and they go to pay. I don't know about you. I could use a free meal every once in a while. I know I look like I could not use a free meal every once in a while. But wouldn't that be nice to get to pull up there and they say, person in front of you said to tell you that God loved you. That can make a serious impact on people. Of course, if you're like me, you're watching constantly. Make sure it's just one person in the car because you don't want to have to pay $100 impact. Anyway, isn't that awful? Shouldn't cross your mind, should it? In 1 Corinthians 4 and 2, it says, it is required in stewards that a man be found faithful. If you're ever going to work up in a job and get promoted in a job, are you going to get promoted if you lay out every other day? Probably not. Are you going to get promoted if every time you go and do something, it doesn't go right? Probably not. You have to show yourself faithful. Do all things as unto whom? Do it as unto the Lord. 1 Corinthians 4 and 2, that's our memory verse. I hope you've learned something that you can take and apply. When I look through the daily devotional reading for this lesson, it's awesome. I encourage you to do that. That won't even give the whole 2 hours worth of time tithing that we should give. But still, try to do that. Try to incorporate. You know, when a baby is first born and it starts to eat, it eats like 2 ounces. Y'all know how big 2 ounces is? You're talking like an eyedropper, about that much. And as they go, they're able to do more and more and more until finally you'll have a kid, they sucking down a bottle this big and carrying it back to the refrigerator going milk by bottle. That's what I used to do. As you can tell, I stay hungry. Anyway, finally that kid's going to have to go from just that. You're going to have to start giving them a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. I said that to make you realize on the spiritual side it's the same way. Start reading a verse a day. Then you're going to see that you're going to want maybe 2 verses. You might even build up to where you take in a chapter a day. You might build up saying, gosh, I can't stop. I've got to find out some more about this stuff. Go for it. I encourage you to do that. You don't have to jump out there reading the entire book of Psalms. And, you know, I'm not going to look at you and say, by next Sunday, I expect Psalm 119 to be finished for everybody in here. That's the longest book, by the way, in the Bible, if you didn't know. But, chapter that is, thank you. So understand, start somewhere. If you never start anywhere, you're never going to go anywhere. But you've got to start somewhere. All right? I hope you guys have learned something today. Any comments about stewardship that you want to share? One last example, and that's because I love Jim Cook. Jim, I find to be very blessed in his garden. Man can grow a garden. Grow some good stuff, too. You know how I know that? Because he brings it to church and he shares with other Christians. He shares with his brothers and sisters. And every year, does that garden seem to get bigger every year? He gets blessed because he blesses others. You can't outgive God. I challenge you to try to do it. And over on the tithing side, we have a promise here at this church. If you pay your tithes, and you actually pay them into this church, and you still fall short, we do offer a money-back guarantee of your tithes. All right? Just to let you know, if you want to know more about that, you see Charlie or Brother Hooper or Jimmy after church. Money-back guarantee on any tithe paying. I love you guys. I hope you've learned something today. 1 Corinthians 4 and 2 is our memory verse.